Hello. In episode 7 of the History of India, we'll deal with various headings under the Vedic age, society, and all. So, yesterday in our video in episode 6, we have seen the early Vedic society and outline of it. And in this video, in this episode, we'll go with each topic in detail about early Vedic society. And even in episode 6, we saw the advent of Aryans and also the relation between Harappan civilization, Aryan invasion or Aryan's entry into India, and also Vedic age. So the relation between three, we tried to bring some established evidence for the relation between three. So such archaeological evidence, it is available in geographical area also, that is referred to in Rig Veda at present, is at best corroborative of the text. So everything that we saw is supportive of the thing that even geographical evidence we are having that Rig Veda, Harappan civilization and Aryan times are all overlapping with each other. So that is the supportive we have for the text. Even the geographical evidence also suggests that. So with that we end something over here, and from now on we go with each head under early Vedic society. So how was the economy in early Vedic society? The early Vedic society appears to have been primarily pastoral. We have already seen this. So pastoral is they have cattle. So these cattle go to graze in the pastures. So they have huge pastures. So that is pastoral economy. They are mainly dependent on cattle and their wealth is cattle. Hymns from the Rig Veda yield extensive evidence of the importance of cattle in early Vedic society. Even they have hymns. So we saw that Rig Veda is, what the meaning of Rig is praise. So Rig Veda would have hymns. So these hymns are mainly praising the cattle. That means they have this as wealth. The term Gau is referred to as many as 176 times. So Gau is nothing but cow or cattle. It is referred to as many as these many times in relevant mandalas in different chapters of Rig Veda, as well as in prayers for Pasu. So there were also prayers held and also hymns for these cattle or Pasu. Pasu in the sense Pasu, Gau, all of these refer to cattle. So there are also some prayers, but Pasu is a broader term which not only includes cattle but also goats, sheep, horse, and even sometimes men also. So they used to do prayers to Pasu in this regard. Further, the word used to denote a wealthy man. So to speak about a wealthy man, they speak the word Gomat. So which means a man who possesses cattle. So they all know the only wealth as cattle. So whenever they refer to a wealthy man, they mean that the one who has got so many cattle. That is Gomat. And many words for battle such as Gavishti. So we have already seen what is Gavishti. It is cattle raids or cattle wars. Also imply a search for cattle. So also that is a kind of search for cattle in which they go for raids or wars and they legitimately get their cattle when they win. That is called Gavishti. The Raja or the chief is referred to as Gopati. Even the rich man in the society is referred to as Gomat. That is, he is known to possess so many cattle. And even the Raja or the chief of that clan or chief of that tribe is called a Gopati. Even his name is associated with the cattle. He is lord or protector of cattle. So everything, their whole economy, society, rich people in the society, everyone is referred to in terms of cattle only. So Gopati is a chief or Raja. Gomat is a wealthy man. The term for daughter is Duhitri. So Duhitri is the daughter of this Gopati or the Raja or chief. She also milks the cattle. So her job is to milk the cattle. So as we have seen, women were engaged in economy. In earlier episode, women were engaged in the economy. So here, in referring to Duhitri, as attributing her also to some job like milking the cattle, so she has got some things. So out of something to do. Out of this, we can know that during Rig Veda or Vedic period, even in early Vedic period, women were given some standard in the society. They were given some work to do, and also they are mentioned with a name. So she is Duhitri. Goduli is used to term for a measurement of time. So even the measurement of time, even that word of time or measuring time is given a name related to this cattle, Goduli. Even distance, to refer to distance, they used to call Gavyuti. So Gau, even here we see the cattle name Gau. So these are some important early Vedic period terms we need to know in relation to cattle. This emphasis on cattle is to some extent corroborated by the evidence from painted graveware sites such as Bhagwanpura, Daderi. These are in Haryana. These are painted graveware sites. That means we find the pottery of painted graveware in these sites, from where a fair amount of animal bones, especially cattle, sheep, goat, have been recovered from contemporaneous levels. So even in Bhagwanpura, Daderi, in these excavations, in these places of excavations where there is painted graveware suggestive of Vedic period, Aryan times and all, so from there we find these animal bones which is suggestive of they were dealing with animals a lot, like they were dealing with pasu a lot, like means goats, sheep, horses, like that. So out of this we come to know how much importance animals were given in early Vedic society. We have no references to the sale or purchase of crafts, and references to trade are also extremely limited. So we have no, this economy is basically pastoral, mainly pastoral, and there is no word of trade anywhere in early Vedic period. So again, with this trade also that happened through barter system. If there is a little trade or little buying selling between people, that used to happen through barter system only. Even in Harappan civilization we have seen barter system only, with cattle as an item of exchange. So they have cattle for everything they use cattle. So even for the barter system also, the item of exchange is cattle. The exact relations of production in pastoral economy are not very clear. So what they used to get out of what kind of economy they used to maintain, or what they actually used to get, how much they used to get out of this cattle economy, the production of things and all is not very clear. But we only know that they used to herd animals and they used to have their economy based on that. It is possible that animals were herded in common, and it is likely that cattle were owned by the large patrilineal family, which gave rise to the concept of Gotra. So not a single person having some 10 cattle, it's not like that, but a whole family, a big patrilineal family. We have seen early Vedic society is patrilineal, with father as the head and the descendants goes to son, grandson and all, like that. So in that patrilineal society there are patrilineal families, and these patrilineal families, all of the family will have a herd of cattle, will have a huge number of cattle. So they possess these cattle in common. They don't have an individual family like that, like today. So this eventually gave rise to a concept called Gotra. So in Gotra we see the word go. So this is also based on cattle. So that means a single family having a group of cattle in common about each other, about one another, is called a Gotra. So that's how it gave rise to Gotra. So Gotra's caste system, everything had their foundations from Vedic age only. However, pastoral lands were under the control of whole community. These cattle were under the hands of one single family, but the pastoral lands, the lands on which they graze, were not under control of any family, but they belong to the whole of community. And there is some evidence which suggests the cattle obtained in raids were distributed. So we have seen they used to go for raids called Gavishti, or wars for cattle, and in these wars whatever cattle they possess, they used to distribute it through some assemblies. They used to assemble all the people and they used to distribute these cattle. So there is kind of this is a kind of gifting. So such assemblies are called Gana and Parishad. So there are other assemblies also. We'll come across them in later study. So for now the important assemblies of early Vedic period is Gana and Parishad, two important assemblies. So these are a kind of functioning of government, we can relate it like that. So in which people will be called and will be distributed with the animals or cattle that they got in raids or wars. Further, cattle formed an important item of dana, not just distribution. They used to give gifts like dana to the priests, commonly by the Raja or the Rajanya. Rajanya or Raja used to give gifts of cattle to the priests, and it was probably a part of the presentation or tribute offered to the chief by the members of the clan or vis. Vis is nothing but a clan. So people used to be in clans. So in one clan there will be so many families. So each family will be possessing some group of cattle. So this is a clan, and such big clans will form a huge tribe. This is how the society used to exist. Long distance trade was also unknown. They don't have long distance trade, unlike Harappan civilization, in which there is long distance trade. We saw that Harappan civilization was having trade relations with Mesopotamia, which is written in Mesopotamian literature. But such kind of trade we don't see with the society of early Vedic period. It is unknown, and the word Samudra is there. That word of Samudra, it refers to mouth of Indus River, because this whole place is the centrality of the place is around Indus River and Gagar River. We have seen it in the earlier video, Indus River and Gagar River. So all the rivers they know is just Indus. So because of that, they only thought that Indus is the biggest water they can ever see. So that is called as Samudra. So what meant of Samudra in early Vedic period is not literally ocean or sea, but the river of Indus, rather than to the sea itself. It's not a sea. Samudra meant Indus to early Vedic people. However, other means of exchange and redistribution were apparently significant. There is also a gift economy over there. We have seen what is a gift economy, in which if we possess a valuable good like gold, we give it to a carpenter, and that carpenter will fetch all the needs of the wood of our family, needs of wooden doors, or he will build a house for us also. So it is not always giving and taking, but once we pay him a huge thing like gold or silver, he will give us back what he can work for our family. So that is called gift economy. You give the gift first only, earlier only, then he will give his work later. So that is gift economy. That was in practice. Such exchange of gifts offered at a number of levels. So this happened at number of levels, gold to carpenter, or silver to some ironsmith, like that, number of levels and with number of combinations. In the first phase, as noted earlier, the booty obtained through warfare was redistributed. We have seen they used to call people for Gana and Parishad, two assemblies, and give away all the booty they brought out of this warfare, all the cattle. Apart from cattle, this must have included horses also, and also after a war they would bring people as slaves. So that could include women, and they used to distribute these also, women, slaves, horses, whatever they get out of the war after they win. So they used to distribute that amongst themselves. At a later stage, cultivated land also they used to distribute. So this is whatever they win out of a war, they would distribute amongst themselves. Such type of things are there, and even gifting is also there. So we see they are just very intact, like they have kinship and very intact to each other, that they gift each other, that they distribute them amongst themselves. So they have a good society and good friendship and kinship amongst themselves. Such a distribution which took place in assemblies such as the Vidata or the Gana. So here we see one another assembly called Vidata, Gana, Parishad, Vidata. So this is also an assembly, probably assured that the Rajanya obtained the continued support of the clan on the one hand. So Rajanya or Raja used to get the support of the clan, because he is giving away, he is distributing whatever he is getting out of war. So he would have good support from the people. So people were oriented in terms of clans. So Vis is a clan there. So he would get all the support from the clan on one hand. So which was indispensable in a situation where the clan or Vis constituted the militia. So that is a good thing to him, because amongst these people only, amongst these clans only, there were military people who were having military abilities, militia, and there were also priest clans. Priest clans were also there, and these people used to offer strength for the war, and priests used to offer prayers for the war. So both of them are important to Rajanya. So they are helpful for doing prayers and sacrifices. These priests, when a Raja would go to war, they would offer sacrifices and prayers. So militia is important for the war itself. So these clans are supportive to Raja. So these prayers are for divine support and legitimization. Apart from the distribution of booty acquired through raids, there was Bali. So there is this redistribution of what they get out of war, that is booty. Apart from that booty, there used to be another word called Bali. They used to give this Bali also. Bali, in later literature, it is regarded as tax. So there is also some kind of tax system, but this is not a tax system what we see today, but this is a kind of giving away tax system. So that whenever we are asked that in early Vedic society what is referred to as tax, we must say it is Bali. Bali was evidently obtained both from the Vis, that is clan of one's own Jana, as well as from hostile people who were subjugated. Bali is a kind of gift which can be given out of one's own people, or which is brought back from war, like who are subjugated, who are brought as slaves. Even they are given as gifts to the Raja. In the former case, that is when you are giving your own people to Raja, it appears to have been voluntary, and you can go voluntarily. I want to be given as Bali to Raja, like that one can go voluntarily, and in the nature of a presentation, as a presentation. The Vis probably brought Bali as means of pleasing the Raja. So, in order to please Raja, they used to give away these slaves to him, like tax, possibly an occasion of sacrifices and feasts. So, when they give this gift of person to Raja, there will be a feast held, and it's a party then. So, when they are paying tax, they are doing a party. The constituents of Bali may have included cattle, so they can give not just men of war, slaves, but also their own men, and also they can also give cattle, they can give dairy products, they can give grains, and from hostile groups it may have included metal, they can give metal objects also. Any gift to Raja is called Bali, and that Bali is regarded as tax. So that is about Bali. In the parts of Bali constituted a source of income for the Raja or Rajanya. Like today's government, the source of income is tax. In the same way, during early Vedic period, the source of income to Raja, the ruler or the chief person, is Bali. That is also a tax. Sacrificial offerings used to be given, provision for communal feasts. So there is a feast held whenever Raja is given this Bali. So that communal feast used to be, this provision used to be given, which accompanied sacrifices. So sacrifices of animals. So these are the parts of Bali. This Bali or gift or tax given to Raja is again distributed to the priests as Dakshina or Dana. So whatever is given to Raja is called Bali. When it is given to a priest, it is called Dakshina or Dana. So this also used to be there. The last was done by him to acquire prestige, as is evident from the Dhanustutis. So Dhanustutis are the hymns of praise to Raja, to a generous person. So when somebody is giving so much of money so much of cattle or gifts like dairy products to these priests, they would sing hymns for them, so that they give them more. So that is a kind of praising hymns to these people. They are composed by priests. In return to Dakshina or Dana, for giving the gift, you are praised. Thus, as in the case of booty, the distribution associated with Bali is asymmetrical. But in a booty, that is when they get something out of war, any cattle, men, slaves, women and all, they used to distribute this booty. They used to have a symmetrical distribution, equal distribution. Because early Vedic society is mostly egalitarian. That means they believed in equality. So every person in society is equal. That is what they believed in early Vedic society. So when they were distributing this booty, they used to do it in equal terms, conducting some assemblies like we have seen Gana and Parishad. But when they are giving Bali, this is a kind of gift or tax. This is asymmetrical. Some would give more, some would give less, and whoever is given more, they would be praised with Dhanustutis. However, such disparities may not have been glaring in a predominantly pastoral setup, where both the form and quantity of surplus would have made large-scale accumulation difficult. So, while giving this pastoral setup, like while giving the cattle away, they do not have this asymmetrical pattern, but that used to be according to a rule, because the quantity is very huge, because you can't give away 2 cattle to one and 1 cattle to another, because that is wealth. You cannot just gift it away like that. So that asymmetry is not seen in pastoral setup. So by this we come to know that early Vedic society mainly respects egalitarian form. Egalitarian is everybody in society is same, because by knowing that they have Gana and Parishad, set assemblies to distribute, there is some calculation to distribute, so everybody is treated equal. That's what we can know out of this. So this ends the economy of early Vedic period. Now coming to agriculture, the evidence is very limited. We are seeing only mainly pastoral type of economy. But the evidence of agriculture is very limited, and it is relatively unimportant. So we have some points under agriculture, we'll see. Most of the references to agriculture belongs to later date. So this evolved later. after pastoral economy. This evolved in later times. This is a new thing to them. Apart from Java or barley, no other grains are mentioned in Rig Veda. But in Harappan civilization, we see barley and wheat being grown. So we see these two, and here we see only barley, which is called by the name Eva. Land or grain do not figure as objects of dispute. So there are no disputes over land, no disputes over grain. So that meant they did not consider land and grain as so much important. But for cattle, they even used to have wars like Gavishti. Nor land is mentioned as an article of donation. Later it evolved as an article of donation, but earlier, in early Vedic period, land is not an article of donation. It is given very least importance. In the Dhanustutis. Dhanustutis, or what gift they have given, everything is recorded in Dhanustutis. That's how we know what used to be given as gifts, but land is not mentioned there. There are also no prayers to obtain land. So there is no prayers to obtain land, but there are prayers to win in a war and to get cattle, but nothing like that for land. Chiefs are not expected to protect land. So we have Gopati. And also a chief person, Raja. So all of these people are protecting the cattle but not land. Early Vedic period did not use iron technology, though iron age is there. So we have seen iron age started from 1000 BC. Early Vedic society is from 1500. So there is overlapping between them, but they did not use iron technology. They did not use copper also, but their main implements were based on stone. So stone tools were existent. So that is what is written in Rig Veda. Though it is in early Vedic Iron Age period, it is not included, it is not involved with iron technology. That's what we must know. Fire was used to burn down forest cover. They were involved in shifting cultivation. We know that. For shifting cultivation, they must burn down the previous crop and get into a new crop. So fire was used to burn that forest cover or that cultivated thing, whatever they used to do. Further, the region received low rainfall. So for agriculture, one must have good rainfall. But that area received very low rainfall, and all the rivers mentioned, they used to change their courses frequently. This word we have seen, this phrase we have seen in Harappan civilization also. So under why it has declined, why Harappan civilization declined. One point is maybe due to change in the courses of rivers. So even this is also concentrated in that area only, that Indus river is flowing, Gagar river is flowing. So they used to change their courses. So and also they used to have low rainfall. That might be one reason that they are not oriented towards agriculture much. Without the facilities of large scale irrigation, so they do not have irrigation also, which were not deployed in that period. Irrigation has not come up in that year at all, and there is no natural rainfall. The alluvial lands, these fertile lands near the rivers, could not be cultivated on a permanent basis. Though the lands are fertile, alluvial lands are those lands that are created out of deposition of sediments over years. So when a river used to flow through that area, and when that dries up or when that stops flowing in that area, all that land is very fertile now, and that is called a alluvial land. So these alluvial lands are not being able to be cultivated then because there is no rainfall and no irrigation. The tools used for agriculture operations were fairly very simple tools, and I have given, and there are some names of these tools which must be remembered. The plough, they used to call Langala or Sira. Ploughshare used to be called Phala, which was probably of wood. So these are made out of wood. Hoe used to be called as Kanitra, and sickle used to be called as Datra, and parashu, axe is called as parashu. So these are the few agricultural tools they were using. And these many agricultural tools we haven't seen in early episodes which we have seen. So we can say agriculture, though it is not very important, the tools got some increment, or there is some advancement in the agricultural tools. The evidence of pastoralism, the evidence of this cattle rearing and all, as well as this shifting cultivation they have, suggests that people were either nomadic or semi-nomadic, because for both of them they have to move. Pastoralism, they have to move from place to place for grazing, and shifting cultivation, they have to move from land to land to cultivate. They used to abandon the land and go away somewhere and put a new crop, or they used to go for a new crop and someone used to come to this land and put a new crop. So this shows that they were moving all the time. They moved out of their villages for a certain period of time to feed their cattle also. So they were nomadic or semi-nomadic. Individual land ownership was virtually unknown. Even individual cattle ownership is also not known. They were not individual owners at all. They used to have everything in common. Land was held in common, although plots were probably periodically allotted to large patrilineal families. So each family, as it was having a set number of cattle, or each family is having a cattle, in the same way each patrilineal family is having a land in common, but it's not distributed among the sons or like that. There is no evidence of the distributions. Cultivation appears to have been undertaken by members of family unit, as there is no reference to hired laborers or slaves engaged in agriculture. These slaves whom they used to get from wars, they used to distribute amongst themselves, but there is no agriculture labor. Only the family head of the family, the men in the family would go out and cultivate their own land. That used to be the practice. However, there may have been a certain differentiation between the Vis, that is clan, engaged in actual process of production on the common land, and the Rajanya or priests, who probably participated less actively in the task, who probably acquired a share of producer's bali. The Raja, king, or the priests, they did not involve in agriculture or any of this economy. Whatever they used to get, the gift is through tax or bali. But the other family the other clans used to work in fields through pastures or through pastoral economy or through agriculture. But Raja and priests used to have bali or tax. And these priests used to have dakshina or dana. Raja used to have tax, bali, gifts also, and priests used to have dakshina or dana. So they used to get their income out of that only. Next, this ends this agricultural part of early Vedic society. Now let's go into craft. So reference to craft are relatively sparse, they're very less. The groups mentioned include leather workers. If there are some craft people, they are only these leather workers, wheel makers, smiths, and potters. None of these groups are considered of low status. There is no low or big. We saw that early Vedic period is an egalitarian society. They used to consider everybody equal. So even leather worker is as equal as a smith, wheel maker is as equal as a potter. So everybody is equal there. This is probably due to the fact that some of them, such as wheel makers, smiths, or leather workers, they have played important role in manufacturing chariots. So these people, there are Rajanyas. So they used to have chariots and they used to go for Gavishti or wars. So for that they need chariots. Even there is militia amongst the clans we have seen earlier. So for these chariots, wheel makers must be there. Even leather works must happen, which was crucial for success in battle. So they are given more importance. These people, leather workers, wheel makers. The horse-drawn chariots, possibly explaining the initial success of the Aryans. So Aryans were having horses, and these horses were having chariots, and they were involved in wars. Rigveda speaks about some wars, right? So that's how we know Aryans were involved in wars, and because of these chariots and everything, Aryans had got success initially while they have come into India. So that is something about craft. It's not aesthetic, but it is mainly, craft is mainly about not aesthetics in Rigvedic period. It is mainly about need for wars, so need for chariots, so need for leather workers, wheel makers. That's how the crafts have come up. It's not with beauty or aesthetic painting of jewelry or shelved jewelry and all like that, like as we have seen in Harappan civilization. There we have women wearing beads, jewelry, and that's the craft we read over there. But here the craft is about leather workers and wars. After crafts in early Vedic society, we have pottery. In case of pottery, the basic technique is similar to Harappans. So Harappans were using pottery. The technique is similar. So are the colors black or red. So even Harappans were using black over red type of pottery. The colors are same, but there is some advancement in pottery in early Vedic period. But the forms of the vessels like urns, carinated vessels, footed vases. So they used to have footed vases like flower vase. That flower vase used to have a foot. So these are some advancements in pottery, as well as the decorations are also coming up. Stars, rings, dots, mythical peacocks, bulls, all of these are new to pottery. So pottery saw some advancement. So there's some advancement in the pottery. That's what we can know out of this. The next heading under early Vedic society is society itself. So how society used to be there. Under this we have tribes, we have status of women, so like that various things. So the society was mainly tribal. By the heading itself we know that tribes are mentioned. The early Vedic society was a tribal society in which social relations based on kinship ties were predominant. So they used to have kinship ties. They used to be arranged in clan, and all of these clan will have different families, and this clan used to be very intact. So because of this kinship, the system is very strong. Tribes are there. These tribes are referred to as Jana. The word of Jana in early Vedic period is tribe. The largest unit, Jana is the largest unit, and many references to different tribes are found in Rig Veda. So Jana is a very large unit. So that is a tribe, and within this tribe there used to be clans or vis. Within these clans there used to be families. So this is the makeup. Intertribal conflicts used to happen. There used to be conflicts, and there is also a battle in Rig Veda called the Battle of 10 Kings. So these are conflicts. Some of the tribes were which fought in the battle. Some of the tribes that fought in this Battle of 10 Kings battle are the Bharatas, Purus, Vadus, Druhyus, Anus, and Turvasus. These are some of the tribes. 5 tribes that fought in Battle of 10 Kings. Tribal conflicts were mentioned earlier, which related to cattle raids. So we have seen Gavishti, that is also a conflict or raid or war for cattle. Cattle thefts are also there because cattle is wealth. Now as a thief comes, he takes gold and money. Like that, as cattle is their wealth, there used to be cattle thefts. The chief of the tribe was the Raja or Gopati. We have seen this. And his daughter also we have seen. She is Guhitri. He was the leader in the battle. The Raja is obviously the leader in the battle, protector of the tribe. His office was not based on hereditary, but he was selected from the clansmen. There is no hereditary system of Raja in early Vedic period, but he is to be selected out of the clan. The warrior group was called Rajanya. These are the militia. Many clans or vis formed a tribe. The repeated mention of vis and the Jana. Jana is tribe, vis is clan. It is repeatedly mentioned in Rig Veda. It indicates kinship, that they are very close to each other and they are strong, intact family or clan system. This not only served to order the social structure. So while a clan or a tribe is very intact and they have huge kinship bond, that will order the social structure. The social structure order will be fine, but also probably restricted horizontal splits within the community. So there are no splits in the community because of this kinship. Though there are some fissions of group, there are some splits also. Established units probably moving off in search of fresh pastures or cultivable land. So if a split has to happen in a family or a clan, if someone has to go out of the clan or the tribe, that must be because of cultivable lands. If they have no cultivable lands, if all the lands are occupied or it's all done, they have to search a few new land. So for that they used to split away from the tribe, or also or it is also for pastures. So they used to have cattle, no? So if everybody is allowing their cattle to graze in a place, if the grass is over in the place, so they need to move away from that place and search for new grass. So for that there used to be splits, but basically this is very rare. They used to have intact kinship or bond. The next topic under society is status of women. Status of women in early Vedic society, it is a complex status. Women played a certain part in productive process. They were also involved in economic process. It is evident with the term Duhitri. She is the daughter of Raja, we have seen, or Gopati. So she would milk the cows, milk the cattle. So that means as well as from their involvement in activities such as weaving. So milking the cattle or weaving, these are what the women are involved into. So they have some responsible work to do. So in early Vedic period, women are not dumb, but they were working. Child marriages are unknown. So there is also no child marriage. That meant women are given good importance or they are involved in some good activities in the society. However, the society appears to have been organized patrilineally. Though they are important, but the basic society is patrilineal, based on paternal side, that is based on father's lineage. And there were prayers for the birth of son. As the society's families are patrilineal, son is important, so they used to pray for son or for offsprings in general. Praja is offspring. Praja or for offsprings in general they used to pray, but there are no special prayers for daughters. So though daughters were involved with weaving, milking the cows, and they have so many works to do, though they are not given into child marriages. Though all of this suggests that women are given respect in early Vedic period, but there are no special prayers for daughters, and there are special prayers for sons, which suggests that there is some kind of disparity between son and a daughter even then. And also most of the major deities are male. Vedic pantheon, Major deities in Vedic pantheon are male. Pantheon is nothing but religion, so most of them are male. So that also showed even male domination is in divine plane in early Vedic period. Moreover, there are no indications to suggest that women could occupy the highest positions of authority. A woman cannot be a Raja. A woman cannot be a priest. So this shows that women are restricted to some extent, not to go into these works of being a Raja, the head Gopati, or being a priest. These are occasional references to hostile. There are occasional references to hostile groups. Hostile groups are some opposing groups or some different groups. Like we have terrorists in today's world, there are some opposing hostile groups back then also. Such as these hostile groups are Dasa, Dasyu, and Pani. Dasa, Dasyu, and Pani. What are these in Rigvedic period? They are hostile groups in Rigvedic period. Hostile groups are those who are not ready to involve with normal society, but those who always come to quarrel, to fight, to do war and all. So hostility, they are unfriendly. So these are Dasa, Dasyu, and Pani. Now we'll see about these hostile people. Dasa and Dasyus. The term Dasa later refers to slaves. Later it evolved to be slave, but then back then they are not slaves, they are even rich people. But in Rigvedic context, they as well as the Dasyus, Dasas and Dasyus are described as rich people. They are possessing cattle. So they are not slaves, they are rich and possessing cattle. They lived in fortified settlements. They used to be far from the society, but they lived their own lifestyle in a rich way only. They used to have fortified settlements. They were dark complexioned and they had snub nose. So snub nose is a blunt nose, not a sharp nose. And that's the evidence we can know about Dasa and Dasyu. Later they evolved to be slaves, but they are dark complexioned and snub nosed, but still they are very rich and they possess cattle. They are worshippers of phallus. We have seen this word even in Harappan civilization. Phallus is male reproductive organ. So they worshipped phallus. Even Harappan civilization, people used to worship phallus. In Rigvedic period, these Dasa and Dasyus, the hostile groups, used to worship phallus. The penis, according to the Rigveda, were rich in cattle and treasure. So even Dasa, Dasyu, Panis. The Panis are also rich and they have huge treasures. Further, they evidently did not practice sacrifice and hence were regarded as hostile. They did not practice sacrifice. So they are away from these customs, sacrifice, away from Bali. They did not give gifts to the Rajas. They did not give Dakshina or Dana to priests. They did not do sacrifices. So they are not involved with the general social works of Rigvedic society. So they are regarded as hostile or unfriendly, away from the society. These groups fought and befriended. So they used to fight all the time. They used to befriended each other from time to time, and one cannot regard them as separate racial or linguistic groups. They are not different in their race. They are very much Rigvedic period people. They also have same language, Vedic language, like the rest of the Rigvedic people and society. They are not different in these terms, but they used to be unfriendly and they also always used to fight. For example, the most famous chief mentioned in the Rigveda is Sudasa. We have an example of a person of this hostile group called Sudasa. He is a very famous chief who is mentioned in Rigveda, who led the Bharata tribe in Battle of 10 Kings. Bharata is one of the tribes that fought in Battle of 10 Kings according to Rigveda over the division of water of river Ravi. So this Battle of 10 Kings was held for this water of Ravi river. So when it is mentioned that it is Ravi river, we know that Harappa, that village is on Ravi, river Ravi is on the banks of Ravi. That means Harappan civilization and Rigvedic people, they were living in very near geographical areas. They were sharing even equal, similar rivers also. So the reason for Battle of 10 Kings is river water Ravi. His very name indicates connection with Dasas. So Sudasa, the name has got Dasa in it. That means Sudasa is a hostile group person. So Dasa is one of the Dasas. So they were having even these chief places in wars also. He led the whole tribe in a war. So however, the presence of different groups in the same area might have contributed to the emergence of Varna system. So maybe this is how Varna system came up, because we are saying they are of dark complexioned people. They had snub nose and they are away from the society. They are leading a different kind of lifestyle. They are not giving sacrifices, danas and also. there has to be a difference between them and the normal people. So that's how maybe Varna system based on color of face and their customs, basically color. So this system has evolved in Rigvedic period. Earlier we have seen Gotra has evolved in early Vedic period, depending upon the family possessing cattle. Go is cattle, and now we are seeing Varna system evolving. So all of them led to caste system later. So we can say the caste system in Indian society has got its foundations from early Vedic period or Vedic period. So this ends something about society, tribes, and status of women, and dasas, dasyus, some hostile groups we have seen. So next is polity of early Vedic period. Though the polity is egalitarian, we know they are tribes, so the tribal polity is egalitarian. It is not completely egalitarian. There is a division that is found in Rig Veda itself, the division between Rajanyas or the warriors or those who fought the wars and were credited to be the senior lineage. There are two sections, that is senior lineage. One is senior lineage and the another is junior lineage. These Rajanyas who fought in the wars are regarded as senior lineaged people. And the next people, next clans, all the different clans, all the rest of the clans are junior lineage. Though none of the groups occupied a distinct social hierarchy, intra and intergroup conflicts used to exist. There are conflicts for these cattle and all. But they do not have a social hierarchy. This is big and this clan is small and this clan is big. There is no such kind of huge differentiation. Conflicts are there. Even distribution system is also there. They used to fight, they used to be friendly with distribution systems. But still there are some differences with each other, like they have this lineage system in mind that helped create divisions in the society. So all of this created some divisions in the society later, which evolved to be caste system. The clans and vis, those are also clans, held large yajnas. Yajnas are called sacrifices to help the warrior groups win in the wars. In these yajnas, the priest is called Purohita. He used to do the yajnas. He used to act as a mediator or leader of these sacrifices to win the war. He is a mediator between the clansmen and God. In Vedic period, we have seen the evolution of Purohita, but in Harappan civilization, we have seen shamanistic component. Shamanistic component is, there used to be an elderly person who used to mediate between God and the people, their tribe and their God. So that was the case in Harappan civilization, but when we come to early Vedic period, that evolved into a priest. So Purohita. Even women seers are also there during early Vedic period, who is also a mediator between God in their religion. But even Purohitas or priests were also existing. So this is some kind of advancement in religion that is happening. He also invoked God's blessings for the chief to get success in the war. While growing incidents of conflicts and fights, yajnas are all very important, have become very important. And as yajnas are becoming very important day by day because of wars increasing, and these priests have to pray to gods, and that has become very important in the society. It became very important, and Purohita or the priest assumed a special status. That is how Brahmins or priests or Purohits are later given the highest part, one of the highest places in society in caste system. Because the wars were increasing, they have to do sacrifices, they have to do prayers. Because of that, they were given a good social status in the society, and they were given gifts also for these sacrifices when a war is won. So that's how Purohita assumed a special status in the society. In the later part of the period, they received a major share of the gifts from the Rajas because they were praying for their success, and assumed a superior position like the other clan members, vis-a-vis the other clan members. So they were given a very superior position when compared to other clan members. The tribal chief or the Raja assumed importance on account of wars. So Raja became famous because he's going for wars, he's winning over the other clan, the other tribe or Jana, and it is the success of all the clan people. So he has become an ambassador for these things, and he has become a major person because of the wars. And now we can observe that there is a huge division coming up between senior lineage and junior lineage. Senior lineage including Rajas who are working hard for wars, and priests praying for the wars. So they are taking good social status. We can see this becoming sharper, this division in society. At what point of time these political distinctions became apparent is difficult to state. So we cannot say at what point of time exactly these differences are sharpening, but we can say during Rigvedic period or early Vedic period, these differences are starting to emerge, which is a foundation to later caste system. But the 10th book of Rigveda contains Purusa Sukta hymn. There is a hymn called Purusa Sukta in 10th book of Rigvedic period, where it is stated that Brahmana, Rajanya, Vaishya and Shudra sprang respectively from mouth, arms, thighs, feet of a cosmic man. Cosmic man is a god they created. He is Purushasva. So they belong to mouth, in the sense Brahmana belongs to mouth. It means he assumes the highest part, most important part, and arms are next important, thighs are next important, and feet are least important, attributed to Shudras. So that's how Rigveda even speaks very clearly of what is existing today, the caste system. So it is these names later signified the 4 castes. And in the later Vedic texts, we find evidence of superior Rajanya groups assuming the status of Kshatriya. In early Vedic period, they were called Rajas or Rajanya. They were called Rajas, they were chiefs in early Vedic period. In later Vedic period, they got a name called Kshatriya. So that is a Varna, highest superior lineaged Varna. That's how caste system was slowly emerging. So it is a separate Varna by itself, Kshatriya Varna. Tribal assemblies like the Gana, Vidata, Sabha, we have seen Parishad also, and Samiti are mentioned in Rigveda. What are the tribal assemblies mentioned in Rigveda? Gana, Vidata, Sabha and Samiti. The Sabha may have been the council of select clan members. Only few clan members are selected and they would go to this assembly. Samiti is where everybody can go. Was a general tribal assembly. When everybody has to hear something, they all used to be assembling there. That is Samiti. Sabha is for select people, Samiti is for everybody, comprising the whole clan. These assemblies perform the functions of government. So that is the polity they used to have then, and were also involved in the selection of Raja from the clansmen. Like we have the election of president or like that in two upper houses or high offices. They used to have this assembly and they used to select the Raja. They thus kept the power of Raja Rajanya in check. So Raja and Rajanya power is checked by these select people from Sabha and all the clan in Samiti. There is a check over these positions. However, we do not find well-defined political hierarchy in the early Vedic setup. So obviously we cannot find this high-level political hierarchy as of today, like that of today. So there is no high-level political hierarchy, but there are assemblies, there is selection of a Raja, and there is a check over that position also. So that is some polity we have then. The next thing is religion. Under religion, Rigvedic people venerated natural sources. They attributed good amount of respect or their devotion to wind, water, rain, thunder, fire. They venerated all these natural forces of nature, which they could not control. They cannot control. Whatever they cannot control, that's a god. And invested nature with divinity conceived in human forms. And for each thing they gave one human form. Like they gave wind one human name, river, water, they gave one human name, and rain god Varuna. So like that they gave one human name, human form to each of the natural forces. That's how religion is created in early Vedic age, which was mostly masculine. All of these gods are again masculine in nature. They are male. Very few female deities are venerated. Even here there is disparity, because the creation of religion and gods will have an impact of society. So their mindset is oriented towards male. So they have more male gods created than female deities. The religion which reflected a patriarchal society was one of primitive animism. So they have patriarchal society and they have primitive animism. They attributed souls to plants, animals and all. And we'll see some of the gods they created. Indra, they considered it as god of strength who would destroy enemies. That means they is related to wars. God of thunder and rain. So Indra is a god of thunder and rain, and could not be vanquished. He is very strong, cannot be vanquished. The concept of tribal chief who was a warlord is also found represented in the character of Indra. So the warlord is Raja or the tribal chief, and that warlord he is sometimes represented as a character of this Indra, god of strength, because he is going to war. Agni, as the name says, it is the god of fire they created. He is an intermediary between heaven and earth. That is what they considered. Intermediary between heaven and earth is fire. in Rigvedic period. He is a god of Agni, he is god of fire called Agni. And marriages were done in his presence, in the sense marriages were done in the presence of Agni. Even today this is in practice in Hinduism. So that Agni, this concept of marrying in the presence of Agni has come up in early Vedic period. The purifying nature of fire is the reason for this. So nature of fire is to purify. So marriages are done in that purifying atmosphere. The importance of Agni can be related to the frequency of yajna or sacrifice in the early Vedic society. So these yajnas used to be conducted in the presence of Agni. It was thought that the offering to Agni were carried to the god in the form of smoke. So whatever you offer to Agni, it would be carried to God. When it is burnt, the smoke would come and it would go to God. So that is what they thought about, and that is the these are the reasons behind how they created Agni. And the next one is Aruna. He is personified as water. He is a personification of water, and he was the upholder of natural order of the universe. Who used to uphold the natural order of universe in early Vedic period? He is Varuna. The next one is Yama. He is considered as god of death, had important place in early Vedic religious belief. So even Yama belongs to early Vedic period god. And Ashwins, or twin gods of heaven. So there are twin gods of heaven. They created Ashwins. There were many other gods. Like Zeus, he is a sky god. Mitra, god of light. Prajanya, he is a rain deity. Prithvi, earth goddess. Aditi, the mother goddess. So there are so many gods and very few goddesses. Here we can see only 2. So only 2 goddesses and so many gods. Even the society was like that, with difference between male and female son, because male son and female daughter. Because male son, for male son they used to conduct prayers, and female for daughter there are no prayers in Rigveda. So this is about religion, and not just in the world here, but they also had some gods who were living in celestial, who were believed to be living in celestial things in outside world also. So these celestial beings are Gandharvas, Apsaras, Maruts. So Gandharva, Apsara, Marut, they created 3 gods who used to live in outer world. That is what they assumed, to whom prayers and hymns were addressed in Rigveda. So they created these also. The numerous deities that are lauded in the Vedas suggest polytheism. So now by this we come to know there are so many numerous gods. So they believed in polytheism, in multiple gods. Although some say that they all have underlying unity, though they say that, but we see rain is different and fire is different. So we have rain god and we have a fire god. So they don't have an underlying unity, but some scholars say they have an underlying unity. Several hymns appear to be definitely monotheistic in tone, while others are pantheistic. Pantheistic is nothing but polytheistic, so many gods. So some are monotheistic. There are songs for individual gods and for all gods together also. In Rigveda, a very personal relationship existed between Vedic Aryan and the gods he worshipped. So there is this relationship between these. Religion was not based on magic or ritual formulae. There are no rituals coming up very sharply in early Vedic period. That is not based on magic also. Rather, it's stressed with communication through sacrifices and hymns, praising. Rig in the sense it is praise, Rigveda. So praising through hymns and sacrifices to gods, that was only the thing to which religion has come up, advanced. Priests merely assisted in the proper performance of sacrifices. These sacrifices, for every sacrifice, priest used to be involved. So the concept of priest or Purohita has also come up only in early Vedic period. So this ends the early Vedic period. We have seen the economy in early Vedic period, agriculture in early Vedic period society, crafts during early Vedic society, pottery during early Vedic society, and just what used to be there in society in early Vedic society. Under society we have seen tribes, we have seen status of women in that society, we have seen polity in early Vedic society, and finally we have seen religion of early Vedic society, and under this various gods they got. And this ends the overall social framework of early Vedic society, and thank you.